Restorers, thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a very special guest with me, somebody that I've been hoping to have on the podcast for a while and somebody I've known for a while in the industry. One of my goals with the Restoration Today podcast is to also help create almost like a time capsule that tells the stories of all of the big industry restoration companies, the legacy companies, and the people behind them and faces of the industry. So today I am very excited to be joined by Rusty Amarante, who is the Director of Operations for BELFOR. And he is just going to share a whole bunch about BELFOR in the industry and what's changed over the years and all those things. We have a lot to talk about. So Rusty, thank you so much for joining me. I am going to just toss it right over to you to have you kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background in the industry.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks, Michelle, and thank you for the invite. Great seeing you. This has been my whole life. I started actually by accident taking a part-time job with a guy when I was 20 years old who had a cleaning business. I took it in summer months during college, my first year of college, and back then, actually, that's going back to 1977. The term restoration really wasn't all that frequently used, but he did these things after cleaning up after little fires and water damages and things like that. And he and I hit it off and became friends. And he owned a franchise at that time. And he and I bought a franchise together. And I never went back and finished college, which I regret. But that's how I got into this industry completely by accident and by mistake. But it was pretty unique. So and obviously that's a long time ago. Yeah.
So talk about then the transition to BELFOR. How long have you been with BELFOR, and share a little bit about the history of BELFOR as a company as well. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself.
Yeah. But... No, that's an interesting story. Yeah, I ended up buying out my partner back then, and to this day, he and I are good friends. But I relocated. The franchise we bought was about 100 miles away from what was home to me, and I bought him out, moved the franchise back to my home area. That franchise got acquired, and when that happened, there was an opportunity for me to leave it, and I became an independent restoration contractor. So I had that business for 21 years, and then knew of Randy Fenton and Sheldon Yellen from the Intercon team. Met them through RIA conferences and that sort of thing, became friends with them. And long story short, they said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about acquiring your company. And frankly, it was something I really didn't have a lot of interest in doing, but lo and behold, one conversation kind of led to the next, and took about a year or so, and then they ended up buying my company, and I went to work for them. So that was they acquired my company in November of '99.
Okay.
So here we are, coming up on 25 years later, which is...
Gosh, with all the trends in the industry with M&A, you were like an early adopter of all that, and it went pretty well for you, it sounds like.
It went great. And if you think back on it back then, really Intercon and, again, Sheldon, and really, they were the only company really acquiring companies. I mean, there was in the scale and scope that they had the vision for, right? There were people obviously that may buy up a local competitor and, just try and expand their territory, so to speak, in a local market. But there really wasn't anybody who had the platform of saying we want to become a player nationally, and that was Intercon's goal, and that was their plan, and they did great with it. They did really well. Yeah.
So how big is BELFOR today? If we're talking BELFOR Property Restoration, not necessarily BELFOR Franchise Group, but if we talk BELFOR Property Restoration, right. How many locations are you up to? How many employees-ish? How big is BELFOR today?
Yeah, so I obviously could tell you more about the story of how we got there, but BELFOR now, is in over 26 countries. We have over 450 locations. We're north of 13,000 full-time employees. And last year we did just shy of 400,000 jobs in a year around the world. Wow. So it's kind of hard to believe and hard to process, but it's true. You know, we take on a new project somewhere around the world almost every 5 seconds. So it's been amazing. And you know, I know, you know, just through little blurbs I hear and there, lots of people like to tell the BELFOR story, and how it may or may not have happened. But I mean, you're talking to somebody who lived every second of it, from the time there was Inricon, to the Rocky Mountain Cat, to BELFOR coming in, and all those things happened during those times. And that was a very turbulent time, but BELFOR really didn't get a foothold and really didn't take off until, you know, Sheldon Yellen's our CEO. Sheldon decided to buy the company from Haniel. He put the management team together. He allowed some of us to buy into it along with him. And once that happened, the company just took off, and it's not stopped. So yeah, we're a $3 billion restoration company. 11,000 vehicles, as I said, you know, north of 13,000 employees. So it's, yeah, the growth has been staggering. And, you know, Sheldon probably won't be really happy with me that I shared all that information, but because we usually don't talk too much about it. But if you look at BELFOR and you look at the history of it, to go from where it was to where it is now,
Yeah.
It's really a spectacular story. It's really amazing. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so I hit fast forward too soon to ask how big BELFOR is today.
Okay.
So you kind of did do it briefly, but let's go back. Enricon, 1999, you sell to Enricon. So what was the path from there to where BELFOR is today?
Yeah, well, so for me, and I guess it's kind of paralleled into the whole story, but for me, you know, when they, and I'm sure anybody who's had their company acquired by somebody went through some of the emotion I did. When they acquired my company, I thought, if I'm here in 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'll be amazed. There's just no way in the world. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life since a kid. I can't imagine me having a boss. I can't imagine somebody telling me what to do. And then lo and behold, here it is 25 years later, and I'm still there. I had an amazing company with just terrific people, and my company was called Maximum Services Group. Many of those people are still with us now. My second in command, Daryl Tuno, terrific guy. He ended up taking over day-to-day operations of my local business. And then Sheldon and Joe asked me if I could get more involved from a corporate level. So as I kind of transitioned into the corporate position, Daryl slipped into my spot in my local business. And it created great, you know, upward mobility and opportunity for Daryl. It created upward mobility and opportunity for me, new challenges for me, and for him as well. And it was terrific. So Daryl has now gone from managing what was then my one office to now overseeing 6 offices, you know, in the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware markets. And as I said, many of the technicians, believe it or not, that were with me back when it was my company are still with us today. Most of the ones that aren't with us have gotten to the age where they've retired.
Yeah.
But they took the journey along with me, and I was very, very fortunate for that. So, you know, we got to that point, and then I had the opportunity to work day in and day out next to Joe Scialino, who, you know, for anybody who know the BELFOR story, Joe was our CFO. He's just an amazing, amazing man, and every bit as much of an operator as he was our CFO. And he very suddenly passed away. So although Joe, Sheldon, and Sheldon's brother Mike, the 4 of us worked very closely together. When we lost Joe, you know, Sheldon, Michael, and I ended up even having a tighter bond. And Sheldon never let go of the vision. He never let go of the drive. If anything, he was even more motivated for the success of the company. And he drove us, and we drove the company harder and harder to continue to have it grow. So it's yeah, that's
So
it's been quite a journey, quite a ride. Yeah, and he's not done. Yeah, he's not done.
I can tell. Because you guys have like specials on TV and all that. I live in Metro Detroit, and so Belfour's
Sure.
on like every Metro Detroit
Right.
sports arena and my kids' hockey games and all the things, like all the local, I mean, everywhere and the franchises and whatever. So that's my next question is when was the creation of Belfour Franchise Group and kind of the expansion into having this full operator company of Belfour Property Restoration and then these franchise opportunities,
Sure.
and there's a number of them, and that side keeps growing as well. So when did that break off and have those two sides?
Yeah, so during Katrina, we had interacted and was subcontracting work to a company called Ducks, and they had a sister company called Duck Busters. Tom Yacobellis, many people know Tom in the industry.
Yep.
And we acquired Ducks as our very first franchise. And we wanted to be in the franchise business. But in typical fashion, we didn't know as much about it as we probably could have or should have, but we just jumped right into the deep end of the pool and we started going and we started growing. And if you think back, that was 2006, 7, then 2008, we had a horrible economic time in the country. So, we just kind of gotten our legs under us with Ducks and the economy just tanked and, the financial freeze happened and the lending freeze happened and it was not a good time. So that system kind of stalled for us for a year or two. But again, Sheldon, always said, hey, there may be some major economical breakdown here in the country, but, we at Belfour, we've decided not to participate in that, and we're going to go ahead as planned. So miraculously, he managed us through that and ignored most of what was going on around us. And while that was all going down in the country, we then added more brands. So we bought other companies. We acquired a lot of Belfour locations during that time, and then we started to expand our franchise business. And we just love the franchise business because, Sheldon grew up as an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur. Joe Sciolino is an entrepreneur. Michael's, it's how we act. It's how we think. It's how we behave. I had no doubt whatsoever, if Harvard Business School folks came and looked at Belfour, if they looked at the way we operate, if the way we function, from a distance, they would say, there's no way in the world you guys can operate this business this way. If this was a business model, it would absolutely fail. It cannot be done. And how we do it is how we do it. We have we don't have big committees. We don't have big departments. We don't have 15 different vice presidents. Our bench is relatively thin with the executive team, and that's done on purpose. We act and behave like a family, and we like to have our hands personally into everything that's kind of going on, and that's how we do that. So the model is very unique and very different. But so moving back to the franchise business again, we just felt that because of the platform we already had built with Belfour and all the locations we had, if somebody joined the Belfour family, they automatically kind of had their first customer, right? I mean, because every Belfour location was doing duct cleaning. And then we just kind of kept going and going and going from there with that model. And it has worked very, very well for us. So we're now up to 15 different brands. We've got, 4 of them that are in their infancy stages. So, they're the sustainability and the growth of them it's a couple of years out, but Sheldon's appetite to continue to add more brands has not diminished. So I'm sure we'll have more as they come on. But we did. We're almost 3,000 franchise territories around the world. With retail sales north of $1 billion. So it's one of the target areas, that we look to continue to plan to build and to grow. But we feel like we have quite an advantage over a lot of our competition, as I said, just simply because of our platform. If you look at Blue Kangaroo Packouts, one of our brands, which just been red hot lately, every BELFOR location has the opportunity to give them business and to help them kind of get on their feet. And for anybody who knows the restoration business, that first couple of years can be pretty tough. So if you can get a really good customer out of the gate, that can kind of ease some of that pain of starting out your own business. Not saying it's not still really hard, but it does grease the skids a little to at least kind of get yourself started. So we love that business. We love, like I said, we love entrepreneurs. We love talking to them. We love hearing the success stories. We love hearing about some of the people whose lives have changed, dramatically, because they went from, a job that maybe was or wasn't quite doing much for them to now, being financially secure and rewarding themselves and their family with things that they just didn't think they would have been able to do. So we love those stories, and we can't get enough of them.
So really quick, back to the Blue Kangaroo Packouts example that you gave. What do you think is driving the industry towards so much interest in contents right now? That really is, I know contents has been a thing for a while, but there are more and more restorers that seem to be interested in adding the content side of it. So what do you think is driving the interest there?
Well, I mean, that business for years has just always been a mess. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And the reason for it is really simple, is because it is absolutely a very specialty trade, but it was never looked at that way, right? So when you think about contents, you should be thinking about it like roofing or siding or a carpenter or plumbing or electric. You cannot have, one of our guys who was doing a board up last night come in tomorrow and pack up somebody's fine china out of their dining room. Right. And so many of the restoration contractors, and when I say that, I'm including my company in that list, so I'm not pointing fingers. That's how it was done, because it was always kind of taken for granted, how hard, this is really not hard stuff. You just go pack it up, you put it in the truck, you bring it back, you clean it. Anybody who's done it knows it's 1,000 times harder than that. We know for a fact most of the people who do it as a sideline, they offer it as an added service, but if you really break it down into a separate department, it's a loser, right? I mean, the people, if you load the truck the wrong way and scratch all the furniture, if you rip somebody's sofa, if you damage, a family heirloom, those things cost a lot of money, and they'll offset the profit on those jobs immediately. And the insurance companies really struggle with this, right? Because obviously they would rather repair than replace. But if the contractor creates more damage and headaches, it's really tough for them to settle the claim in a reasonable way. So, we identified the weakness, we identified the soft spot, and the contents business, it needs to be treated as absolutely a separate business with the respect and the expertise that it deserves. And I think anybody who does it as a sideline, I think their experience may not be all that good. So again, that brand over the last 2 years has just been explosive for us, and we've got a large pipeline of people who want to get into it, and in many of the areas are already taken. But we see the insurance companies and the insurance industry already recognizing, what it is that we're capable of doing, and the brand's able of doing, and the training and the specialty trade that we help it make. So I think that's part of why you're seeing all that with so much attention from contents. Again, I think maybe we may have put a little spotlight on it, but we see it obviously as a very viable business.
Yeah. It's hard to be as big as you are and not get noticed for the things that you're doing, and that does impact the industry for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. God forbid we ever stub our toe. That gets that doesn't get ignored either. But yeah, we try very hard to do the right thing. Yeah.
Everyone stubs their toes from time to time. So
Yeah.
everyone does. All right. So you talked a little bit about wading through tough economic times. And so I want to also talk about wading through the M&A landscape that has been just tremendous in the last 4 years, we'll say. How has BELFOR kind of waded through that? You've remained an independent company, continued to grow. You have the franchise side. So how have you waded through and stayed competitive as the industry continues to consolidate? And there are these other bigger players that are kind of moving up in the getting bigger, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure every industry would say what I'm about to say, and that is that I think that I think our industry is a little different,
Mm-hmm.
from a typical business, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're selling a service or a product, you know, traditionally, things there's other industries don't have accounts receivables that go on 120, 150 days, 6 months, whatever. They look at stuff like that as uncollectible money. There's not too many other businesses where, our customer, and I know we all say the same thing, our customer is the policy holder, but the funds are coming from someplace else to the policy holder to pay us. So it's a very delicate balance here, and it's a very interesting business. So um, because there's so much publicity about restoration over the last, 15, going back to Katrina, I guess, about billions and billions of dollars worth of business. Well, when M&A folks and venture capital people hear billions, it gets their ear. So they look into those opportunities. What we see are, just because you can invest in these companies doesn't necessarily mean you know how to operate one.
Sure.
And that's probably one of the biggest observations that we see. So and we really and truly don't study it that hard or look that hard at it, but we can certainly see from a distance, the ebbs and flows of the different acquisitions that have been made, acquisitions that have been shut down, companies that were glowing and then are closed. We've seen all that. So we're very conscious of it, but again, we feel like we're operators, and so if you can operate it well, it will probably go well.
Sure.
So that's really our observation from it. But it is without a doubt. There's just a ton of money out there, and M&A looking at it from 100 different directions. But yeah, like I said, this is not a simple business.
It is not. Staying in your lane is wise, and I think that's what most business coaches would say: stay in your lane and
that's right.
Keep driving it forward.
Right.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit. This is a little bit more of a fun angle, but the BELFOR's view of community. You've done the Heroes TV show. I live in Metro Detroit, as I already mentioned, and BELFOR is everywhere in Metro Detroit, major community involvement here. And I'm guessing that Metro Detroit is not the only place that sees BELFOR on all of our stadiums, our hockey rinks, all of that. So talk about BELFOR's commitment to community involvement and what that means and the value that you see behind that.
Yeah, well, Birmingham, Michigan is our worldwide headquarters for BELFOR. Ann Arbor, Michigan is our headquarters for our franchise group. So obviously we've got a very large presence in Michigan. Having said that, our commitment to community for every single one of our locations is grand. If we very much not only want our managers, and keep in mind BELFOR itself is not a franchise, that it's wholly owned, so our managers and staff for BELFOR are employees, not franchisees. But the integration of working with the communities and being recognized in the community, and to contribute to the community on a local basis is extremely important to us. And so there's always an allocation of funds and commitment and those things to each and every one of our offices to make sure that they're playing a role in the community. And you know, that's we've just done that for years and years and years. So, you know, as an example, and I forget the date, but every fall, you know, we do a pizza day for all the local police departments and fire departments and things like that. Just as a thank you to what they do, and appreciate them for who they are, and the passion they have for taking care of people. You know, if we see there's you know, somebody needs help with something and it's a lane we can help with, we try very, very hard to do. So that is a part of our DNA. It is a part of our culture. It's a part of Sheldon's passion around the world, and it's penetrated to all of us.
So as our industry has gone through a world of changes since 1977 and then 1999 and like all these different dates, what do you, without giving away BELFOR's secret sauce, but what do you attribute to BELFOR's success to? How have you stayed competitive and continued to grow in an industry that also continues to change immensely, almost year over year?
Yeah, well, you know, and I know it's a word that's used all the time by a lot of folks, you know, these days, but hands down, it's just our culture. It really and really truly is our people. You know, the only reason I'm not going to mention names is because I'm going to leave names out, and there's not hundreds, there's thousands of names that contribute to what it is that makes BELFOR what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't exactly quite know how Sheldon was able to drive this culture so deep into so many people in so many locations, but he was and is very, very good at doing that. And you know, I'll just kind of give you I knew you were going to ask this question, but you know, I'll give you an example. We had one of our lead guys who works catastrophes and national events for us. He was on the road and away from his house for 7 months.
Oh.
And he was flying home. And on the way home, we had a major loss come in someplace. And he was the guy that we really wanted to have on that job. And I was hesitating calling him because I felt so terrible that he'd been on the road for so long. And I called him and I said, "Hey, Guy," his name's Guy Butera. I said, "Hey, Guy, I know you're just getting home. I'm sure you're exhausted, but you know, this big loss came in and it's in Indiana." And he goes, "Rusty, I'm already on my way to Indiana." He goes, "I knew you'd be calling." So,
yeah,
I don't, you know, I don't know how to better define our culture than that.
Yeah.
And we have hundreds of those examples.
I'm sure. So give a few examples of major things that you've seen change in the industry since 1977 when you first joined and thought that you were going to be in and out in a few years, and here you are.
Yeah.
What are some of the big changes that you've seen from then to today?
Well, you know, Michelle, I think it's funny. I don't think there's been as many changes,
Okay.
believe it or not, right? So look, you know, first, I want to personally thank, you know, Marty King and Cliff Zlotnick and Pete Consigli, who, you know, were people who so unselfishly gave so much of themselves to build our industry for everybody. You know, you know, most of the people know Pete and know, you know, Pete in particular, who I love and is a handful, and I tell him that. But you know, Pete did not have a restoration business. He didn't have a consulting business. He didn't have any financial gain from all the energy, effort, and passion that he put into this. His whole goal was to build and help the industry.
Yeah.
And he made it a very concentrated effort to bring, you know, what he viewed as the leaders in our industry back at that time together to try and help build it. And thank God for him and Cliff and Marty, who so unselfishly gave over and over and over again to all of us, in the RIA group, who were brothers, they there was never any help they wouldn't offer or give. They're
Yep.
just amazing, amazing
Yes.
people. Obviously, Marty's passed away,
Yes.
but I don't read as much as I used to, and about our industry. But it kind of cracks me up that back then, one of the things we talked about all the time, which was just a massive nightmare for our industry, was accounts receivable and how do you deal with it. Well, if you pick up anything nowadays, talk about our industry, accounts receivable will probably be in the top 2, 3, or 4 topics, right? How insurance adjusters are terrible because they don't know how to scope a job accurately, and we're brilliant. We do know how to do it, right? And I'm being sarcastic there, obviously, but those things have really and truly not changed, right? They're still major topics. But when I think about it, I think so rarely. I think that a lot of us who, the RIA family and the independents who act and think that way are somewhat in a bubble. And because look, if I owned an insurance company, I would do exactly what the insurance companies are doing. I would make sure that I'm not overpaying, and I would make sure that, frankly, I'm not paying too quickly, and I would make sure that I'm keeping the contractors in check, and I would make sure, that I was preserving my business interests of running an insurance company. So, having said that, again, if you go outside of that RIA, the respected restoration contractors, everybody needs to realize there's a whole nother area of restoration contractors who do nothing but bruise and damage our industry. They're terrible. They grossly overcharge. They put unrealistic demands and pressure on the policyholder to get payment. And they just abuse the insurance companies and the policyholders. And when they do that, the insurance companies, don't just say, well, let me put that person in this pile, and yet we're all lumped together.
Yeah.
And how the hell do they manage that? They have to do what it is that they do to try and control it. This is probably 2 months ago now. We had somebody called and said, hey, they had a trauma scene cleanup that needed to be done at their home. So our guys went out, they looked at it, thank God it wasn't too bad. Our bill to do it was $5,000. So, when it was over, the homeowner said, I just have to show you something. Here is a competitive bid I got before I heard about you guys. And it was for $40,000. $40,000. Well, you explained to me how we as an industry look good. If somebody is taking advantage of somebody at a time like that, with those gross overcharges, and expecting, not only the policyholder to pay for it, but the insurance company to pay. Yep. It's just embarrassing for all of us who try so hard to do the right thing. So I think, we talked back then about the lack of trust between us and the insurance companies. That's still, a topic somewhat today. But I think the only way, that gets better and better is doing the things that we're all doing, and play by the rules, and do the right thing, and be fair, and be reasonable. And, and we'll establish more and more credibility as time goes on. Obviously, things that Ed Cross and those are doing, I think will lend to that credibility. But like I said, as funny as it may seem,
that's fair.
Some of the things that were going on a long time ago seem to be a major topic still today.
Drying is drying, getting paid is getting paid.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, right? And hey, don't get me wrong, when I started, we didn't have air movers, so that's how embarrassingly long ago that was. So look, are we better technically than we were. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so dramatically improved. And everything we do is better and better and more advanced. Those things have changed.
Sure.
But I guess when I think about the major topics of things that are out of our control of an industry, of interacting with our clients and the insurance companies and big customers, so many of those topics are still rattled around the same conversations when everybody's sitting around the bar.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So share a favorite story from within the industry. Your biohazard story is unfortunately like that's a common story that so many restoration companies can share of like, we went to do this and X company bid like, wow. And yes, so that's a big area to work on. But let's talk about a favorite story. You must have many. So I don't know how you could even pick one, but a favorite story from the industry. It could be on anything.
Oh, geez, I hadn't thought about that. Oh my
I know,
goodness.
and I'm putting you on the spot. It could be from
Yeah,
a
yeah.
convention, a loss, anything, an employee.
Wow. Um, yeah, we actually we actually it became one of our commercials, but we did a tornado loss at a school,
Mhm.
and it was a devastatingly massive loss. But one of our technicians went through one of the classrooms and found a goldfish in a bowl. And he took that goldfish home and he took care of the goldfish until the building was rebuilt. And he didn't tell any of us. And then when school opened, he returned it.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Goldfish.
So,
I'm impressed that it survived too. I mean, goldfish. You never.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. But he, there was pictures on the chalkboard about the goldfish and the goldfish's name and all that sort of thing. So he didn't want to tell him because he was afraid, he may not be able to keep it alive that long, but he did, and he returned it to him. But that nobody in our company asked him to do it. Nobody, said, "Hey," it was just something that he took upon himself, and for us, that just kind of explained a lot about our people and who they are. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. The stories are. Well, actually now I think I'll give you one other story. It was
Please.
during Katrina, and we were just so crazy busy, and um, I was there, and I was in the warehouse because all our crews had left, and this truck came in, and it needed to get loaded with air movers. And just coincidentally, Sheldon happened to pop in. He goes, "Geez, where is everybody? What's going on? Is there something I can help you with?" And I said, "Yeah, you can help me load that truck with air movers because there's nobody left here but you and I." And I no sooner turned around and he was out there, in his suit loading the truck up. So that's, again, one of those things that you just
Yeah.
wouldn't typically think about or expect from a CEO of a company, but that's how we do it.
All hands on deck,
All hands
especially
on
in
deck.
catastrophes. It's how we get through.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Rusty, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up? Anything you want to touch on? Anything at all?
no, not really. Again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and schedules have been what they are, and things have been a little busy. But yeah, thanks so much, and I appreciate it. And yeah, we're very proud, obviously, of BELFOR, but we're very proud of our industry as a whole and all the folks who work so hard every day to try and help people when they're going through a tough time. So
Yes. Well,
appreciate it.
Rusty, I appreciate your time very much, and
Yeah,
hopefully we'll bump into you at a show sometime soon. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
you bet. You too. Thanks so much.
For more restoration today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.